Hello, welcome to Season 7 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is the current state of horror. We'll be watching 20 or so movies from the last couple of years, reviewing them like normal, and then also talking about some of the larger trends we see. If you want to see the list and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. You had seen this movie before, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I have to admit, I did see it while it was still in the theater, and I went into it with like super high expectations because it was Ari Aster's second movie, and I knew that he had like a lot more resources at his disposal, and I was really expecting a lot. And so I wrote a review of it for our website that wasn't very nice. But my main issue was that I felt like with this one, he kind of like recycled a lot of the story elements and just replayed a lot of the same tricks. And so it really was kind of focused on this movie compared to Hereditary rather than just a pure review of this movie. So today I'm going to not dwell on that in the podcast. If you want to read that, just go to thehorrific.com. But I want to keep my discussion today about Midsommar. And if I don't do that, call me out on it.
Yeah, I'll do that anyways. The question I have pertaining to that, though, is how long do you give a musician or a director or some sort of artist to do the similar things in their art before? What's the line between this is their style that they're kind of creating and this is the, like, they're overdoing it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so like how many pop punk albums can a band make before you're like, I mean, you guys maybe want to learn some non-power chords?
Or it's like Get Out and Us in the same kind of conversation because, the two that he did. Yeah. Like, that's where I want to know the line, because it's like, you got to give them at least time to establish what they do.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking this for my personal, my personal YouTube channel. Like, I do a lot of the same stuff, and I'm just trying to figure it out for me, not for this podcast.
Yeah, fair. Good question. I don't know. They typically talk about how a lot of bands end up having a sophomore slump.
Yeah.
Because typically the material that got them to the point where they could record in the first place is stuff that they worked on and played live and iterated on and improved for like a really long time. And then they sign a record deal, and so they record that first album. But in doing so, they go into a real studio for the first time and work with a real producer for the first time and have like all of this additional stuff that comes along with it. And then they go out to write their second album on a time frame, and then it's a thing that happens quickly after they've just learned a bunch of new stuff but haven't necessarily mastered it yet. And then you have this second album that a lot of times doesn't really like track with the overall like arc of that artist's creativity. And I don't know that I would say that, because I think it would be too easy to say, oh yeah, Ari got money and then he made another movie that was the same as the first to try and cash in on the same thing. I do think there was like a lot of effort put into this one. I think there was a lot of research put into it, and I think there was a lot of design. But I do think that I don't think it was so much like a money grab as it was just like, these are the things that I think are cool in movies and I'm going to keep doing them. So back to your thing, it's like, yeah, I liked them. I liked Hereditary. I thought there was a lot of good stuff in this one, but I didn't really need to see them both. You know what I mean? Like, if I was making a list of top 50 horror movies, I would never put these both on it, because I kind of feel like you've seen one,
That's interesting.
So 3 is my answer.
Okay. That's all I need. Thank you. Good God.
We just edit that last time.
Yeah. All right.
But anyway, yeah, I will. I'll introduce it. You can do your fun facts, and then we will get into it.
Okay.
In 2019, A24 brought us Midsommar, the second film written and directed by Ari Aster, whose name you may remember from our episode on Hereditary. Midsommar tells the story of a young woman named Dani who joins her boyfriend and his friends on a trip to Sweden to see a traditional midsummer festival in the small community where one of the friends was raised. As time goes on, though, Dani starts to discover that the idyllic village has a dark side. This movie was made on a budget of $9 million and brought in around $50 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
Bingo. Nicolas Cage enjoyed this movie. Compared it, the cinematography, to the work of Swedish filmmaker Ingmar Bergman. Fun fact. Boom. Another fun fact. William Jackson Harper, the only American actor in Midsommar, although 4 of them claim to be. Florence Pugh is English. Wilton Pulcher is born in Colorado, but I don't know where he's raised. Jack Rayner is Irish. So, of the 4.
Well, what makes you think the Colorado guy's not an American?
Oh, it says Florence Pugh is English, as is William Poulter,
okay.
and despite being born in Colorado, so
gotcha.
He technically gets all the benefits of the United States of America.
Yeah, but all the acclaim of having an accent.
Mm-hmm. So this movie was originally supposed to be NC-17, but the original movie ran for 3 hours and
Good
received
Lord.
NC-17. But just out of, I think the thing was, it's just out of like taking out the 30 minutes of footage from the film, it just what was able to drop it down to an R.
They were like, no one under 17 has the attention span for a 3-hour movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's see. So the original script was actually even more gruesome. For example, Christian originally found the bodies of both Josh and Simon in the chicken coop. Not just Simon. Josh would have been chained to a fence with his liver hanging out of his body, covered in chicken feed, being pecked at by chickens. There would have been a jump scare that revealed that he was still alive as he suddenly gasped for air. Instead of having his still inhaling lungs out of his back, Simon was supposed to be hung from his heels. I don't think that's worse. I don't think it's more gruesome. So that's a fact that's not. Yeah. But, what can you do? Midsommar, although beautifully shot, scenic, is mostly done in Hungary, not in Sweden. For the record, this movie was showed in Sweden. They thought it was a black comedy. It was Jack Rayner's idea for Christian to be naked at the end. Jack Rayner. I believe he played Christian. If not, I would have been pissed.
Typical American.
I would have been pissed if I was Christian. Yeah. But it was his idea to remain naked as he runs around the commune because he felt it would make the character seem more vulnerable. So, those are my fun facts about the movie.
Interesting. So, after we watched this one, Sarah immediately wanted to watch like some YouTube videos about it, like explaining the ending or whatever. And one thing that came up a lot in all of those was just talking about how much research Ari Aster had done about it.
Oh, yeah.
And how, like, that thing where Simon was hanging and the lungs were, like, outside of his body hanging above him, that was actually, like, an ancient Viking torture technique. And a lot of the stuff in the movie came from things that he read about, like, old Viking society and kind of, like, the darker things of that he tried to build into the culture of this village. And one thing that I thought was really funny is that, at least according to a video that we watched, the whole thing where there was that tapestry that showed the old love spell where the girl put some of her pubes in the guy's food and some of her lady blood in his drink, and that makes him fall in love with her.
Yeah.
Ari Aster claims that that is an ancient Viking tradition, and no one else can find any evidence at all to back that up.
Good Lord. Good.
So maybe he just had a dream, but yeah.
Very well possible.
It was just funny to me that he claims the grossest scene in the movie was based on history, and everyone else is like, "What history are you talking about?"
Yeah. Just because you say it's history doesn't mean it actually is.
Yeah.
So, in anything that you or watched, did it go into the whole like cult thing? Like, did you go much into cults with it?
No, not at all.
One of the things that I was watching was like, this is obviously a cult. What's going on there? And the thing with the cult was, or the thing with cults is, I just wanted to throw this fact out there because I thought it was interesting. They say 70% of women or people who are in cults are female, and I think it has something to do because generally if the guy or whoever is running the cult, they use like typical domestic abuse behavior, which is what. Yeah. But it's like this still kind of confusing on why, like it's that high of a number for them, but it's just like that typical kind of abuse. But this has like a tie into like neo-Nazi cults, all white kind of thing, and
interesting.
Yeah, and
I didn't pick up on that.
And bread and stuff. But yeah, it was pretty crazy stuff. But I just thought, I mean, that's some of the things I was watching about it. Well, what happened was I woke up at 4 a.m. yesterday, couldn't go back to sleep, and so I pulled up YouTube, and it actually had a video about Midsommar that I watched, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I just went down a rabbit hole until 7 in the morning. So
nice.
Yeah.
But in general, I feel like it was a pretty well-made movie. There were some things I didn't like about it stylistically, but they were like artistic choices, not it just being made bad. You know what I mean? And so I really, really liked a lot of the directing of it. And so even just like the scene transitions, one of the early ones was when Danny's crying in the bathroom, or she's going to the apartment, the bathroom in the apartment, and is like crying, and then she opens the door and steps in, and then she's in the airplane bathroom while they're on their way to Sweden.
Yeah.
Like that was such a good transition. And there were several others kind of like that spread throughout the movie. But it's just those little details, I think, of like doing something that you have to do in a movie, which is change scenes, but using that as something creative and artistic, I like. And that keeps me more engaged as it's going along, because you feel like you have to pay attention to how you get from one place to another. And then another example I really liked was that when they were filming the car driving out to the commune, the way the camera like flips upside down, so that the car it kind of is going along with it like that, and then flips back. I thought that was a really creative take on a movie that's been shown in like every horror movie ever. That is just like, oh yes, okay, I get that the characters are leaving the safety of society and going off to this isolated place where something bad could happen, but finding an interesting way to do that, I thought was another cool thing that just kind of shows that there's a lot of attention to just the movie making of this movie beyond just telling the story, and I like that.
Yeah, I got it. And to tie in with that too, I like some of the way that the scenery was shot. I thought it was great, but I also actually liked the soundtrack of it. I thought it was kind of mellow.
It was very mellow
and kind of chill. Kind of liked it. Could almost fall asleep to it. I did fall asleep during the movie.
That doesn't surprise me.
I was tired. I got up at 4 a.m. I watched it last night. I don't know what to tell you, man. I was tired. But yeah, it definitely had. Here's the thing with it, and it kind of ties into the cult. So like, I feel like the way that they did the first half of the movie before they got to Sweden, and the second half, or like the first quarter and second 3 quarters, because it was a long movie. It seemed like everything in the modern world was all like really dark, like not only the death that happened, but like everything just seemed dark. It seemed like it was at night, it was snowing, it was just really depressing. You go to the party, it was kind of dark. You go to the apartment, it had like dark walls and stuff. And then you go over to Sweden, so like you see kind of what he's doing, I guess, where he's showing the dark kind of crazy place that Danny is in and why it would be realistic to join a cult like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's sunny, everyone's smiling, all that kind of stuff. I mean,
yep.
What can you do? But I could kind of see what he was doing in this movie. But here's the thing, I guess if I'm catching it, then he didn't do too well of a good at hiding it because I'm not the greatest person to pick up things like that.
It almost reminded me of The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I
in
can
the
see that.
like
Dark
the intro
black.
is this like kind of dark drab
Yeah.
place, and then you wake up and you're transported into this completely other world that's like totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was interesting. But there were definitely a lot of things that sort of transitioned over. So I thought it was interesting that I guess kind of the big opening scene is where Danny's sister kills herself and their parents.
Brutal death scene. For their
super brutal. And you see her, and she has like the hose that's hooked to the exhaust on the car, like taped to her face. And you see like the close-up shot of the corpse, and then like that face keeps coming back kind of throughout the movie in the background and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was interesting that they showed that it was like, even though Danny was in a completely different world or a different place, she was still kind of being haunted by other things. And I mean, however you want to take that, but I saw it as just like the general idea of like trauma being a thing you can't just walk away from.
Yeah.
Because it didn't ever turn into like a haunting type movie at all. It was just a sort of a carryover. And I think to your point, the real world as opposed to the cult world, and why one looked so much better to her than the other was interesting.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean I think that's strictly what he was doing too, being that that's why a lot of people join cults, is because you come from broken broken places.
Yeah, and so you mentioned earlier that you fell asleep on this one. I had in my notes that there was a lot of silence, but I was also watching with the subtitles on, and it was weird to me how there kept being stuff in the subtitles that I couldn't actually hear. Like it would say like so-and-so reading scripture, and I could not hear that, even though the TV was turned up really loud. And there's one where it was like drum beats in the background. Definitely could not hear a drum beat. And then one that came up a lot was baby crying.
Oh yeah, baby's crying nonstop in that movie. And
I did hear it, but I saw it in the subtitles a lot more than what I heard or picked up on. And that made me think that it was probably a lot more important than I imagined, but I never really did pick up anything on the significance of that.
Well, that's crazy, yeah. Yeah, I definitely thought I heard it, but yeah, we didn't do it with subtitles, so I don't know where I missed it. But yeah, it definitely had to play into it, because one scene specifically when they're in like the whole cabin, like all the bed area, and like it's constant baby crying, and they're trying to sleep, and you just get like some anxiety because you're like, man, how are they able to try to sleep? And all that stuff. Like there's baby crying when they're going to sleep, and there's baby crying when they wake up the next morning. Like it's just the scene change. I was like, God dang, someone punch that baby or something.
Yeah. Well, they did put the scissors under its pillow. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think, so I think my main rant with this movie really is that, so I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I actually enjoyed it more than Hereditary.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. I thought, for me, Hereditary, it's not a bad movie. But if we're throwing out examples like I put in earlier, it would be the Us to Get Out. Like I really like Get Out. I really like Get Out, but I like Get Out, or liked Us. If that makes sense. Hereditary was good. Don't really have a desire to watch it very often. With Midsommar, I could definitely throw it into like the Halloween loop. I definitely enjoyed it, and but it was just a whole horror aspect of it. There were some scenes that were like, oh, that's sketchy, but kind of like what we talked about with Dr. Sleep, where if you have a 2.5 hour movie, it's hard to have horror nonstop. Mm-hmm. And, with this one, when they weren't having horror, it was just kind of a strange movie. You know, just like what's that guy who directs that does like the Royal Tenenbaums?
Oh, Wes Anderson.
It's like I've used this example before, but it was like Ari's like a Wes Anderson director of horror, like the style. I
actually
and stuff.
Had in my notes that a lot of the visuals at the Commune reminded me of Wes Anderson.
Yeah, because
just because you had the really bright colors and everything was so lined up. Yeah.
It's really like OCD, but yeah, that was my main gripe with it, was just not enough horror.
Yeah, that was actually one thing I had in my notes that I wanted to talk to you about, was like, how was this scary, and like what was it going for as far as being scary. And this one, I think it's safe to say, was a very slow burn, and it was interjected with some pretty gory or pretty intense parts. But I think the general idea of it was just like this growing sense of dread. And I totally can see, now that you say that he went back and cut out like over 30 minutes of it, that may have complemented that a little better. Like the full vision may have been a little better realized if those were in there.
Yeah, it could have been.
But it just, there was never any big chase scene or like confrontation or fight or anything. Like it was really just a growing sense of creepiness kind of through the whole movie.
Well, I think that's so. What was creepy for me, like looking back on the film, was the fact that like these people were going missing, and like it was kind of being addressed, but not really. Right. It was just like, yep, she had to leave, or they had to leave. Here, come put this on, and like that was kind of what was dreadful. So you went from having like the confidence. For me, what it was is you had the confidence of having your pack with you.
Yeah.
So you had the 4 people plus the 2 British, if you want to count them as a person, and you had them like together, and then all of a sudden it's slowly kind of dwindling down. Well, you don't have one of the British people, then you don't have the other, and then you don't have, just go on and go on. And it was literally down to 2 people, and when it got down to the 2 people, one of them, well, they were both kind of drugged for one was doing the dancing, the other one was alone, like super gone because of the drink that he had, and just like the not insecurity, but I guess he was just alone at that situation. He had lost, basically kind of lost the support of his girlfriend, and these people were not. They had like the plan for him, and he was getting pushed into it, and it was just there wasn't that person to say, "Hey man, you're okay," or like "Get out," or "Let's make a run for it," kind of thing. It was just that was kind of like, it's like the claustrophobic kind of thing in a way.
Yeah, you could see that. And I think it was interesting too that like as the movie went on, you knew that the cult was definitely like dividing them and splitting them up on purpose.
Yeah.
Even though they came across as being like super sincere and nice. So just sort of that like, not really passive aggressive, but that hidden motive of the way that they were dealing with the outsiders was really interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it definitely makes sense too, because that's kind of how I think that they do it. Like, I mean, even the police kind of do it. They split you up, But yeah. Ugh.
One of the more brutal scenes of this season, though, one of the more disturbing images, was when the 2 oldest people go up on the cliff and jump.
Yeah.
And the old woman steps off and smashes her head and dies. But then you see like the up close and personal smashed head. And then the old man jumps and lands on his feet and shatters his leg but doesn't die. So then another group from the tribe go over and take turns smashing his head with a hammer. And you had like an up close shot of the head as it was getting smashed, like a Gallagher watermelon. And that was the first time I noticed it, at least, where like the whole community reacts with like a shared emotion. So when he fell and was in pain with the broken leg, they were all like wailing as if they too were in pain. And that was a thing that came up sort of as it went on more so. But like when the girl was having sex with the American, and when everyone was getting burned at the end. everybody was sort of reacting. But there were a couple of times where that type of thing was happening, and it almost just felt like fake. Like it felt very put on. And I don't know that was the intended thing, but I thought it was just kind of interesting that my perception of that, if that was intentional, was that the whole like persona that the cult was putting on of this like loving, welcoming family was also totally fake and just showing you what you wanted in the moment and stuff. So I don't know how much of that was intentional, but I just thought it was interesting.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a good. My thinking is that it would have been it wasn't supposed to be like that, like where it was perceived by us like that. Where for me, to tie in what you were saying was when she was crying after seeing her boyfriend have sex with. With that was one that seemed like that emotion was like almost egged on, kind of not legit. But why I think that it wasn't. Why it was supposed to seem real was like when they were having dinner and stuff. It was always like they were always like smiling. It seemed like looking, waiting for the person who's leading the dinner, like for the old people who are dying, waiting for them. Like it was always just like set and like they were always in sync. Sit down. Finally, as soon as you pull up your knife and your fork and knife, they all start eating. So it was almost like they're supposed to be that. Working as one emotion kind of thing, but I don't know,
like a hive mind type.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I think they may have missed the target.
Yeah, and one that was weird to me too was, just in general, I get what happened, but I didn't really get like what it was supposed to signify in the ending, where they put the bodies of all the sacrifices in the temple, including Christian, paralyzed inside the bear suit, and then they just set it on fire and it burns down, and everyone outside is screaming and throwing themselves around as if they're burning too. But Dani, who has presumably become one of them by being crowned the May Queen, is sitting there covered in flowers watching, and then she smiles. Mm-hmm. And so I get like she's left her former life behind her. She has now embraced her position in the commune, and she's going to be one of them and is happier and everything. But if she was like fully part of what they were, why would she not have been going through the same emotional thing that they were? Like, to me, that would have been a more powerful ending, was if she also was like screaming and moving around. It just it was weird to me. And I had read too that Ari Aster had gone through like a really bad breakup while he was writing this script and made a bunch of changes afterwards as his reaction to that or something. And so I do kind of feel like there were some mixed messages in this movie, and I wonder if maybe that's why. Yeah,
from what I was reading, it was talking about how like it was kind of like the relationship was based off of his in a way and the breakup, but he was more on the Dani's side of the relationship than what was happening in the movie. I don't know. I think, even though you touch base when you're saying that about how you think it was, you get that it was her, finally joining. I think that was like the final. I think for me, it was almost like it was up in the air. Like her boyfriend treated her bad this whole movie. Yeah, maybe that's an initial sign that she's decided to join, or it might just be that she finally lost it and wanted him dead, and he's dead, and because we don't know if she stayed with the cult, so who knows? But I think that's a really good point for me. I think it's I think for the movie goes, or as far as the movie goes, I think it's just kind of creepy, I guess, because you're in the foreign country, Sweden, which has like ridiculous mountains and oceans surrounding. So even if you get out of their commune, like you're still screwed. For the record, you can't get out of there. But I don't know, just the intense pressure. You have these weird people like, we know that someone stole this Bible or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, the Bible is one thing, but like they have a mentally disabled person who's the oracle or whatever, who writes for the Bible, for their Bible, but the reason why they are like that is because like strict inbreeding,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's
to
just
create
like
them that way.
it's like, gosh, man, that's like that's terrifying. Like that's super terrifying. Like that if that were a real thing, who knows if it is or not. Basically, it was like Egypt, from my understanding, back in the day. What can you do?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to insult every country, not on purpose. Talking about
Except
Cleopatra.
except Colorado.
Yeah, except for Colorado.
But yeah, so I guess so we had kind of the opposite reaction to like this one versus Hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like Hereditary was the one that was definitely like creepier to me on the whole, and that stood with me a lot, and that I will probably rewatch. I feel like you're kind of the opposite, and I think that maybe I kind of like the more like supernatural, creeping, danger aspect of that one, whereas with this one, kind of the idea of being in the other setting and surrounded by the cult and losing your allies and all that is kind of more the thing that resonated with you.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense, like over the years, like with Witch and like a couple of those kind of up your alley, and all the good ones were up mine,
Right, yeah. Well, and yeah, even like with kind of the more like serial killer type thing where you have like the group of teenagers and they're getting killed one by one.
Mm-hmm.
That's always kind of been your jam. So interesting.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but this one I just, it's like, obviously you don't enjoy it. It also, I would just like to touch base on this briefly and real quick, is it has the scene where like the grass is growing out of Danny's hand.
Yeah.
And like that's like my phobia. And I'd just like to let you know that last night I was watching this with my sister, my sister-in-law, and my wife, because it's a fun family time. And my sister actually really likes, or not really likes the film, but she was the one who initially told me. Anyway, so we were watching with them, and I faced the phobia. I told them I'm going to do it, and I watched the whole thing, and I thought it looked fake.
Same.
And it still made me gag. But it did look fake.
Yep. Well, on that note, I think we have completed season 7 of the Horrific Podcast.
Yay.
This one was,
one.
Yeah, I know we talked about it last time too, but this one was a breath of fresh air after season 6 and that terrible list that we decided to work our way through. But yeah, we will be back next week with an announcement of what season 8 will entail, and I don't think we're going to take any time off. We're just going to roll with it. And cool. Yeah, and welcome to all of the new users or the new listeners from July. We saw those numbers spiking. Thank you.
Crazy.
And yeah, we're going to try and keep it interesting and exciting for you. I can't talk today, man.
It's a good thing we're doing podcasts. Sorry. No, it was exciting to see those numbers jump. I mean, it wasn't even like 1 or 2. It was like a ton.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all. Stick with us, and we will keep trying to entertain you.
Yeah. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe.
Send us an email once in a while.
Or don't. We delete them. I have a rule that just deletes all things, spam. That's why our inbox is always clean.
I lost the password like
Really, emails, I don't do that. But yeah. All right. Okay. See you guys later. See you next season. Hate you.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. So if you had to say who was the good guy and who was the bad guy between Danny and Christian, whose side are you taking?
The sisters who killed herself.
No.
This is a lose-lose
situation. Are you team Danny or are you team Christian?
Well, Well, I don't think that anyone should die for infidelity. Is that what it is when you cheat on someone?
That is. Yeah, that was good usage.
Thank you. I don't think you should die for something like that. I will say, however, I'll say it this way. Initially, I was Team Danny. However, when I watched this with my sister-in-law, and my wife, like I just stated, I was so fed up with how much they were calling him a jerk that I started to defend him.
Second time around, had exactly the same reaction.
Yeah.
It was way too one-sided in the depiction. And they're like, I can't believe he's being a dick for no... It was like his character would just change.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden he would just be like a jerk about something in particular. Whereas before they went there, he was like super accommodating and nice, even though he like wasn't that into the relationship. And she like invited herself on a trip with him and his friends, and it was just like, I feel like it became really obvious at what point in writing the movie Ari got dumped, because Christian just became irrationally terrible from that point forward.
Well, it's also like, hey man, if I'm doing work, like I'm trying to get my thesis.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, if it's a bad thing, but it's like, okay, well, he did forget a birthday, doesn't mean he should die.
Now, he also should have had a spine and just said, hey, we're going.
Well, yeah.
But
and I can see the frustrate, but yeah. And then also it was like, when it was talking with them, they were like, you know, like saying like it was good, like, all right, he got what he deserved. It's like, well, he was drugged and he basically was date raped.
Yes.
I guess he kind of knew what. I mean, I don't think he would even say he knew what was going on, because a normal person wouldn't walk into that room in this weird state and just like go at it. There'd be like stage fright.
But so she like cast the spell. She did the thing in the tapestry, and so he was already screwed from that. And then they gave him who knows what to drink afterwards, and you know,
it's like. Yeah. It's like saying, hey, call me an idiot, and then you call me an idiot, and I go, oh my god, he called me an idiot.
Can you believe this guy?
Can you believe it? He deserves to die.
Yeah. No, I think the main takeaway is, like, if you're not into a relationship, just end it. Don't stay in it and string the other person along and just be, like, half in, half out. Because what will happen is they will end up coming on a trip with you and killing you.
Are you breaking up with me?
Absolutely not.
Oh,
I'm 100% committed to this relationship. All I'm saying is, if you're not into it, get the hell out.
Oh, yeah. No, we're good. Okay. We're good. We got, we're good. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that statement.
Miss you, boo.